Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube, the best goddamn video game podcast there is. And today we have a special segment for you. We are running a new series called Fresh Take Tuesday. And on this Fresh Take Tuesday, we are going to be talking about Mutant Year Zero, Road to Eden. And the point of this series is we're going to be talking about games that surprised us or games that we either didn't expect to like, or this is really going to be a positive series where we talk about games that surprised us that we liked. So this one, this really surprised me. So we've got my brother Nick is here, Noah is here. So Noah suggested this game to me maybe a month or two back, and I totally missed this game. And what I always say is, like, I feel like I'm so hungry for those, like, handful of games a year I miss. And that when someone suggests one to me or I stumble on it, it's like the best thing in the world. And this game was one of those. So this game came out in 2018, I believe. It was by a Swedish studio called The Bearded Ladies. This is a tactical game along the lines of, like, a combination of XCOM and Divinity Original Sin. It's played in sort of like an isometric sort of style where it's a little bit top down, but you're still exploring in a whole environment like an adventure game. And Nick is here and Noah is here, and we all really liked it. So Nick, why don't you start it off first with maybe some initial thoughts you had? Because after Noah suggested it to me, I said, Nick, you have to play this game. So why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo some of Greg's comments here. I thought this game was great. It totally surprised me too. I had missed it. I don't really know how I missed it. Greg, I know you and I are pretty big into tactics games, so I don't really know how we missed it back in 2018. No one I knew even talked about it. One point I want to make is after I finished it, I was like, this game was great. But I checked out the reviews, and I expected it to review through the roof. And it kind of didn't.
No, not
it's
really.
Like, not that it's bad, right? It has like a 78 or something.
Yeah, in Metacritic, it was high 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. And Greg, I think we tend to agree that game scores tend to be inflated. So we usually think games deserve a lower grade than what they have on like Meta and OpenCritic. But for this one, I saw it and I was like, no way. This game deserves a lot better. Dude, I will say I did play this game for free. So maybe that influenced my opinion too. But yeah, honestly, I think critics were overly harsh on this game. I thought it deserved way higher than what it got.
Yeah.
What do you think, Noah?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, this was like a nearly perfect game, and the standout feature is for me the balance, right? So this game is so carefully and perfectly balanced that if you miss one little stash of grenades, or if you miss one shot, right, the developers have taken such great care to ensure that you need every last gun upgrade. You need to upgrade your character as well if you want to finish these increasingly difficult groups of enemies. And I want to add to that, what I really enjoy is something that's done in this game is when developers don't hide the stats behind much larger numbers, right? So it's not like this armor is 5,000, this next armor is 7,000. It's like 1, 2, 3. You want an upgrade to your gun, it's +1, right? And you can much more easily see that play out in the combat, right? Where you're like, okay, now my enemies have 10 health points, cool, and now these two characters can do 5 damage and then 7 damage on a crit. I can probably make these 2 shots and take them out, and it's just so tight and really well balanced.
I really want to echo that. I'm really glad you brought that up first. I remember when I was talking to Nick about this, I said what I really like about this game is the small numbers. Like where someone doing 3 or 4 damage is a lot. Or like, and when you get up to 6 and 7, it's a lot. And also something that you said before, that I really like how you said that, where the game is very well balanced. And to me, this thing was tuned so tight, dude, where I found myself like, like you said, every health kit counts, every grenade counts, like every little bit of the monastery system counts, and weapon upgrade points count. It really surprised me. Like I figured like this game might start hard and then it's gonna kind of, how most games do, they kind of trail off. You start to take advantage of the systems and then it becomes easy. I'm with you, dude, like 100%. I remember playing this game, and for the first, God, I should say most of the game, I was really, really strict about health kits and what weapons I was going to upgrade. I really planned stuff out. And your characters only having single digit health, and eventually, you know, I believe it gets up into the teens depending on who you use.
Yeah.
Dude, I honestly thought that was awesome. And it was a breath of fresh air where you don't have 9,000 HP like in some RPGs and stuff like that. That's, yeah, for sure. That jumped out to me too. What I also really liked that I'd like to touch on next, I actually really liked how the stealth was incorporated into this game. How it's not necessarily a stealth game, but it feeds into the small numbers that Noah, that you were talking about, where if you can have your 3 active party members take a turn and without being heard by the enemy, you can slowly pick off enemies and not start a combat sequence, which I thought was really cool. So just the quick and dirty for the audience, if they've never played this, you have a squad of 3 people, and the combat sequences play out like Divinity Original Sin, where if you trigger an enemy or if you like aggro an enemy, it typically will aggro a whole group, and you sort of have to get through that fight before you can move on. And if you can successfully stealth kill an enemy within 1 turn, and you can game that later, but simply, if you can kill an enemy within 1 turn, you can slowly pick off members of combat and sometimes avoid full-on fight sequences at all, which I thought was super neat. Like in some boss encounters, you can do that too. Like, do you guys remember the sequence on the ship? Like
yes.
when you pretty early on, and I remember actually doing that fight 2 or 3 times because I was like, can I really kind of sneak my way around the ship and get people one at a time? I thought that was great. I mean, I don't know if you guys maybe have any input on the stealth mechanics. It jumped out to me as something that was really unique, but I don't know, maybe Nick, if you want to start.
Yeah, a little bit. So this is interesting. I totally do not agree with what I read. That was some of what this game was critiqued for, that it people were like, you pretty much have to play stealth. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess, yeah, you do. But this is kind of what this kind of game is. I don't know if you didn't know that going into it. No, it's kind of the point. I love the stealth. I loved sneaking up behind people, using all the silenced weapons. I thought that was awesome. And at a certain point, once you get 3 of them, you can have your main 3 people using 3 silenced weapons. You can see if you can combo, like Noah said, to get just enough damage done to eliminate without 1 enemy before you take on the big group. I will say some of it is a little funny, where I remember one fight, I made some giant robot just blow up with enemies in the vicinity and they didn't hear it. I'm like, sure. I mean, I'll take it. Yeah. I loved it though. I thought that was pretty awesome.
No, yeah, I mean, the stealth, go ahead.
The stealth element for me was a lot of the fun. I mean, eventually you can game it a little bit when you get the sniper rifle upgraded to the point where you're firing, an unsilenced weapon out of the earshot of enemies, right? But even that, I mean, the developers wouldn't have missed that, and it really is useful, right? Because yes, you can avoid an entire combat encounter by picking off everyone, but my go-to was to at least try to pick off like 2 or 3 people beforehand. And just playing that game of, okay, this AI has 10 health, I can do 11 damage with these 2 characters. Let's go for it. And then what was a really interesting addition to the gameplay mix, right? Even though it's not hardcore and super complicated as a gameplay system overall, but the focus on crits I found really interesting, because when you play something like Divinity, and when you play something like any Larian Studios game, right? You are thinking about crits, but you're not. The whole gameplay, loop doesn't revolve around them to the same extent, where you're thinking like, okay, I've got, because we can talk about the weapons and attachments now too, I guess, right? So you have a damage modifier and you have a scope, and the scope increases your crit chance by a lot in some cases. You can go up to like 20-30% on
and
like some of the snipers
have increases through the skill tree.
Yeah, Farah. What?
Yeah,
Pharaoh has the crit ups if you level her up, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And guys, one thing we haven't mentioned that kind of ties into the stealth is the fact that it's not strictly isometric. It is when you're in combat.
Yes.
But outside of combat, you're getting a little bit of that hit of a third-person action title, and that also segues into the art, right? Because the art is fantastic. The art is gritty and moody, but not in a cookie cutter kind of way. They managed to balance kind of the cartoonish nature of running around as like a duck with a gun, with really getting that kind of dark and gloomy feel. It does feel apocalyptic in a way that I would say even something like Fallout doesn't succeed in doing it as well.
I'm glad you segued into that. I want to talk about the world design a little bit. Mm-hmm. So Noah's right, where this game, I actually thought the presentation of this game was very unique. Like I rarely comment on presentation anymore in games because it's just always so good where I don't care, right? And I think with this game, not only does it look good, it's presented in a way where it is top-down sort of, but it's not like XCOM where you go mission to mission and you just have these combat sequences. The game is broken up into a series of zones that you can go through and adventure, almost like if Divinity, and maybe like you might think of Divinity and maybe like Ocarina of Time a little bit, where you know what zone you're going into, they all have names, things like that. And what I thought was really cool is you get just enough like drip of adventuring in this where it hits that nice sweet spot of it being, like Noah said, an action adventure game and a tactical RPG, where you are going to be finding weapons and armor in treasure chests, and there is some aspects of looting. So you are going to get some. And if you guys don't mind, I'd love to move on a little bit to how the quest structure works. Because what I also found unique about this game is that you really are on like one mission the whole game, and you have like an objective. You need to go to this zone and do this. But what I think what the game does really well, there are a few side quests, and they're very tasteful. You don't get like bombarded with like radio quests or fetch quests. That really isn't in this game at all. This game is really like very focused. I don't know if you guys remember, I think there was a mission about like this guy asks you to like turn his lights on or something.
Are you talking about Lux?
Yeah. And you realize like it's actually being like driven by slaves, and you have to make some choices about why that's happening.
I loved that because it's like Lux is one of those big brain dudes who have mind control powers. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking to him and when you leave, your characters will comment saying like, oh, that guy's pretty cool. He's pretty nice to us. It's just nice to make some friends. But you as the player, you're like, wait a minute. I was told that these ghoul guys, they're not good guys. None of them, they want to kill all the stalkers. Why is this guy being nice to me? Mm-hmm. So you kind of have this conflict where you're thinking, so is this an exception? Because games tend to do that. They have that one monster that's nice to you, or that one enemy that's nice to you for, I don't know, no reason or some other reason. Or you're thinking, or is he just mind controlling my characters and I have no idea? So you have to like come to that decision on your own and decide what to do, which I thought was really cool. That's really the only major quest in the game, I think, aside from the main missions. I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah.
Let's talk about characters a little bit, because when you first suggested this game to me, the one thing I was wary of that, I mean, they did a really good job before I played it, is like, is this going to be too cartoony and silly? You know what I mean? With like, you're playing as a pig man and a duck man, and there's like a fox girl and then two really weird humans. Like it's very quirky. And what I actually liked about this game was I was surprised at how well it was acted for the most part. I think I was a little bit annoyed with like, what's that character, Pharaoh, who shit talks every time she shoots at an enemy.
She talks so much shit. It was really funny.
Which I found a little bit annoying. But what I found interesting was I actually got into the characters a little bit, because I feel like Borman, your main guys are really Borman and Ducks. Mm-hmm. And I actually thought this game was more believable than I thought it was going to be. Where like a little bit of background, like you play as these mutant characters. There's this central hub where this elder kind of tells you about the story and kind of tells you about what's going on. And it, you know, he's telling you to, you know, to go here and do this, and the story, will keep it spoiler light, but the story takes some really interesting turns. Like, did you guys have any comment on the characterization at all? Like, Noah, did you have any comments?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I thought the humor was really well done, as you know, also.
Yeah.
And one thing about this game, man, is you could either say it's got a lot of cursing or a realistic amount of cursing. You know, if you're in combat, you know, you're not going to say, oh shoot, you know, you know, you're gonna throw an F-bomb in there, you know, and there are times where they say, oh shit, you know, just and just, you know, expletives in the dialogue as well, but it actually feels more natural than some watered down, you know, bullshit. And you know, I really enjoyed the characters. I don't know. I can definitely easily get into the kind of mutant, you know, humanoid vibe, especially if it's not done in like a, you know, overly comical way that just would clash with the setting. And yeah, I mean the touching on the hub as well. I would say if you take the little bit of looting and a little tiny bit of item finding and the really simple hub, I have no problem with that. It's almost like you're getting all of the fun parts of an action adventure title, right? Including the character development too, without any of the nonsense that's kind of accumulated over the years, right? The crafting and the fetch quests and all that stuff.
It's like the bullshit that you don't need. Right? Yeah. I think like I won't get too far ahead of myself, but I think after I finish this game, what I said to you guys both is I wonder what a big budget sequel to this would look like. Where Likewise. This was a very, as far as I know, this was a very budget title. I have never heard of this development studio. And also I bought this at a heavily discounted price. I'm not saying this is a fact, but I do not believe this sold well. I could not find any information on how this game performed.
It's a damn shame. You should all play this game. This game is awesome.
Yeah, I know. Nick, did you have comments about that structure at all that Noah was talking about, like the hub and how this whole game was put together in, I would say, in a very like tasteful way? There's sort of like, I feel like the bullshit in this game was none, or it was limited. It was really, really cut and dry.
Yeah, bullshit to a minimum. That's pretty good. I mean, or zero bullshit, really. I want to talk a little bit about what Noah said about the characters too. One little touch that I really liked is whoever you have, quote unquote, leading the party, whoever you're controlling, they say different things when you go to different areas or see different environments. Every character has something different that they say, and they're all very unique. In a tactical game, I lean more toward the games where you have actual characters rather than generics, typically. And that's why I think this game really stood out to me. I mean, you're very obvious, like, Dux is like that lone sane man kind of guy. Whenever you're going somewhere, he says, guys, do we really have to go here? This looks kind of scary. But if you were leading with Borman, you'd be like, all right, let's fucking go. Let's do this. I love the juxtaposition between those two guys and the other characters, too. As far as the hub goes, totally agree with Noah there. The hub, it's great. It gets the job done. I actually played another game that had a similar looking hub where it's like you click around. You don't really walk around it. You click the different environments. The Banner Saga actually does hubs in the same exact way, and I think that's really cool. I mean, there's no bullshit. There's no loading screens. There's no take 3 minutes to walk from here to there. You click there.
Oh
boom,
my God, yeah, just fucking walking around. Yep. Where's this shop? Where's that shop? Oh, it's closed. How do I wait in this game again?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Can we? You know what? Now that you mentioned the shop, I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but all upgrades and money, which is scrap, is limited. You cannot grind.
It is finite.
So it's all finite. Whatever you find on the ground. That's what I wanted to bring up next. Is I guess it has to do with the world building a little bit too. That it really rewards you for exploring, like the artifacts you can find that unlock new things at the bar. You have to really look at every nook and cranny to get all the weapon parts, to get all the scrap. I know enemies occasionally drop scrap and weapon parts. Enemies are limited too, but I don't know if those drops are random. I'm not really sure, but
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, the game really rewards you for not just beelining through the enemies to the next area. They reward you for searching every little corner, because you never know. In the top corner of the map, you might find 10 pieces of scrap, and 10 scrap, especially at the beginning of this game, is super important, and you don't want to waste it.
Yeah,
I don't know, Greg, do you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah, I do. What I love that you brought that up, because not being able to grind gave me big Fire Emblem vibes in this game, like from the Game Boy Advance.
Yep.
Like especially the self-titled one, where like you just need to play well and be thorough, because you can't just grind your way to victory in this game. You can't do it.
I didn't mention this. I don't know what difficulty you both played on. I played on very hard, which is the quote-unquote hardest difficulty unless you play the Iron Mutant mode, which means your health does not recover after combat. In the other modes, it does, at least a little bit. In very hard mode, there's no health recovery after combat. Your skills don't come back after combat. So you pretty much, Greg, I played this game like you play Resident Evil. If I don't do a battle well, I'll reload it and try again to see if I do a little bit better. Maybe I can take less hits. Maybe I can not get hit. And I thought that was awesome. It rewards you for playing well. And I think that's what a good game does. Rewards you for playing well.
Yeah, I think, Noah, did you and I both do it on hard, or whatever the recommended was?
They're recommended for people who like these kind of titles. I think they specifically said that. So it must have been hard.
Yeah, they said
but not
very hard mode was for people skilled at strategy games. This is the intended difficulty. I'm like, well, they fucking
then that's probably that's what I would have done. Yeah.
If this game's calling me a bitch, I got to go for it, man.
Yeah, especially if it's like,
I felt called out.
You like strategy games? Don't be a little bitch. Do it on this difficulty.
Exactly.
But you're right, man. It was so impeccably balanced. I can see why they would want to tell you to do that. Like, hey, like, you know, we do have an easier version for you, but like, this is where we did the math. It. Yeah.
Like, so for the audience out there who hasn't played it, your health does not recover for you at any point. Like, if you go back to the main town, I thought there was going to be an inn, or like you heal when you go back to town. You do not. So like on hard mode, your health only recovers to 50%. After combat, and very hard, it does not recover at all. So what I fucking love that, dude. Like, when I kind of got beat up in a battle, I said, what if you go back to town? Like, what happens? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. You are in the same point of when you left, which I was like, I fucking love this game. So let's talk about how combat works a little bit. We talked about stealth and how you can pick people off, but let's maybe get into a little bit of nitty gritty how this game actually plays when you get into the shit. So Nick and I are tactical RPG fiends. Like, we love this shit. But like, I do not like XCOM very much. Like, and I don't know why. Like, I really try to like it. Like, I don't know if you guys are with me on this.
Dude, I'm right there with you. I
try to like it, and it's just, I just feel like the RNG is too like irritating, and I start to save scum it, and then I start to piss myself off, and I just am not that into XCOM. And I think what this game did a little bit better was it's interesting, where I don't consider Mutant Year Zero very forgiving, but XCOM isn't either, but they're just very different.
The RNG is a lot more simple.
It's very simple. Where like, whether it's taking cover or having a height advantage, or what I thought was cool about this game that I really appreciated was, depending on what gun you use, it has an effective range, and then your percentage falls off after a certain amount of range, which I thought was really cool. And I don't know why I like this game better than XCOM, because the systems at play are very similar. But did you guys have any details about combat that you wanted to talk about? Whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that I found was interesting was how they kind of split up the enemies. So you have your kind of standard dudes who are super fun to kill anyway. And then you have your larger enemies. Then you have the robots as well. And the robots, or just, the whatever you would want to call them, are susceptible to EMP grenades, but those are very few and far between. So basically, once again, tying back into how kind of tightly designed this whole game is, if you find that one EMP grenade, you better make use of it and save it, maybe for a while, until you can get like 2 robots with it instead of 1.
Yeah, totally
for
agree.
sure. I want to say this too. Yeah, Nick, jump on in just a moment. I want to say this too. What they did very well, correct me if I'm wrong, you can only have, what, 1 or 2 grenades equipped at a time?
2, but you can get the upgrade. If you give an artifact, you get like an upgrade to 3 grenades at once, I believe.
That's right. So you don't just pull them from your inventory. Each character has to have them on their person or you cannot throw them.
I can't tell you how many times I fucking forgot to re-equip a grenade and like, fuck.
Time to reload a save. I fucked up the grenades again.
Nick, why don't you touch on combat a little?
Yeah, so I loved the way they did skills in this. Every character learns a bunch of skills, whether it's, I think if they go minor mutation, major mutation, and then passive. And you can have 1 of each on at a time. So you can have 1 minor, 1 major, and 1 passive. So it becomes kind of like, do you customize your skills to be like all-arounders, or do you set every individual character up for the certain situation? And so like if you're facing a bunch of robots, characters like Dux and Pharaoh, they both have an ability that stuns robots like an EMP grenade. So it's like, if you're facing a bunch of robots, it's probably a good idea to bring them both in your party. And I also loved and was like, this fucking game where skills are also kind of limited, where on very hard mode, they don't come back after combat. Like in the other difficulties, you have to get kills to restore your skills. So, and technically, because enemies are finite too, you can technically run out of enemies to like replenish your skills. So if you're going into the final boss and you're like, ooh, I wish I could knock this guy down, but shit, I don't have enough kills to use Hog Rush and there's no more enemies left in the world. Shit. So it really makes you like prepare and really think battles out, because you're thinking, okay, I could use this one skill that takes 3 enemy kills to come back on this one random enemy, but I have to be totally sure that I'm going to be able to get those kills back easily, or the next battle I won't need it, just in case you totally screw yourself. I totally loved that. Extra level of planning, extra level of micromanaging. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And they would make you, it'd make you really carefully consider your setups, right?
Yes.
You're moving characters around individually, and that's another element of fun that you don't really get in kind of a Larian Studios game like a Divinity, because in those games you're being funneled down, a little path, and if you're going to get in an encounter, you're not going to be able to, split your party up and move them around, especially, there's no verticality, compared to this game where you really see this huge increase in, critical percentage if you're just 1 or 2 stories up. And I thought, that was fantastic.
That's a great point. I totally forgot about that. Like height matters in this game. A couple of characters have skills where I think it's called moth wings, where they fly up in the air a few tiles of height and they get increased crit and increased hit if they do that. You can combo those in the same turn. Like if you fly up with the moth wings and then use a skill that hits multiple enemies, you can have like a multi-target attack at 100% hit, 100% crit. Yeah. It's pretty awesome, the combos you can do. Really love that.
Yeah, I think we haven't hit on like how crazy the crits are just yet, right? Where it's you get to the point where it's not like where you're in a typical fantasy tactics game. You're like, okay, I've got this sword here and that's 9% crit, and I've got this helm and now I've got 11% crit. It's like, damn, now I've got this sniper rifle and it's 100% crit from this distance. I know I can take this guy out.
Yep. Absolutely.
I feel like this game, we've talked about it a lot. I think balance, it was just one of the best finely tuned games that I've played. And it really comes back to everything that you guys are saying. And what I really loved about this was, as sort of a, getting off combat for a second, but I'll end it with this. I really liked I really felt myself learning the game and like understanding how to set up combat well, especially with these crits and height. Like, do you put ducks up somewhere with a sniper rifle to set it off and stuff like that? It was just very well done. What I want to ask you guys next is, did you have a sort of like a party setup that you like to use? Like, or did you have 3 favorite characters that you like to have in your party, or did you always change it? Nick.
This is actually half a gripe with this game, and because of just my play style. I tended to customize my party per situation. Like I had a group of 3. I like to use Magnus, Pharaoh, and Dux when I was walking around, because those 3 had the passive crit skills and they were really good for sniping. But if I wanted to switch in another character, if I was going to go fight in like 3 people, it's kind of cumbersome to do that. So toward the end of the game, I kind of stopped customizing it, and I felt like that was kind of lame how it really just impeded my playstyle that way. But at the end of the day, I loved using Borman, Dux, and Pharaoh, occasionally throwing Magnus in there. I don't know about you all, but I love mind control. I think it's called Puppeteer.
Yeah,
I love mind control. I
yeah.
abuse that a lot.
Sure.
Especially when you get Magnus and the game is really hard. It's nice to be able to control like a big tank guy and have him take all the hits.
And just going back to this, being able to set up a combat encounter. I mean, I think across all genres of games, right? It's always a lot more fun when you can, take a second and choose, okay, how am I going to use all the resources I have available to attack this group of enemies or this base or whatever. And so, it's always so much fun to sit back and be like, okay, I'm going to mind control this tank unit and just see how much it'll fuck shit up in this one turn. And okay, cool. Now I've got these 5 guys with a chunk taken out of their health.
Right.
It's awesome.
So before we get into final thoughts, why don't we, because we should do our due diligence here, why don't we maybe talk about some flaws in this game, if you guys think there were any? Because this was pretty close to a perfect game for me.
Yeah, I'll go first if that's okay, because I actually have a couple of gripes with the game.
Okay.
I thought technically it was not that sound. My game crashed a few times, especially on reloading saves, so I thought that was kind of annoying. It didn't take away from my enjoyment of the game all that much, because like this game autosaves a lot.
Yeah,
I think it autosaves after every battle, so you're really never losing any progress, even if it does crash. So it wasn't a huge deal. There was occasionally like some skipping. My characters would say the same line twice in a row, which I thought was kind of weird. So the game's not very technically sound, and not that I want to harp on it too much, but the Nintendo Switch version of this game is not unplayably bad, but it's at the point where everybody is like, don't get this game on Switch. It's not a great port.
Sure.
So I don't want to put that against the devs too much, but it's something that should be said, that it's on the Switch and it was not a great port.
Yes, I want to make sure I say this. So the bug that I encountered frequently was my party would not rally to me no matter how many times I press the button. I don't know if that happened to you guys. Like, and Nick, I'm going to counter this a little bit. I wouldn't say this game isn't technically sound. I think it runs very well. There are just some bugs in here that you're gonna have to quit and reload because they will not correct themselves.
Yes.
I'm trying to think like an actual, if I'm getting away from bugs and that sort of thing. Nick, you touched on this a little. Something that bothered me a little bit was you talked about how cumbersome it is to have to switch a character out and put their gear back on.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the UI when it comes to changing out armor and weapons, if you want to switch characters, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It can be kind of annoying. Really, besides that, I didn't really have much of a problem with this. I really enjoyed it. Noah, did you have any flaws when you played it, or did this kind of check the boxes for you?
I can't really think of any. I mean, definitely, it would have been nice if they automatically moved your equipment around some of it, but I mean, it's just a few clicks. I mean, I was on PC. I don't have like a baller gaming rig, but it was fine. I had no technical issues at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nick and I were on Xbox, so if
that might be part of the issue with the cumbersome. It was probably easier to point and click to trade characters out instead of pressing buttons.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to be a real snob, right, you would say, oh well, this style of game is designed for PC. Well, not really. It totally works, but there are going to be some moments where it would be nicer to just click and drag instead of moving things around with a thumbstick. But honestly, playing with a thumbstick is kind of part of the fun in a way, because you get that little hit of the third person action. You're moving the camera around yourself, then you're kind of slowly creeping, choosing your speed. Right.
Why don't we get into some final thoughts here? Because we're going to keep the spoiler light. The story does take some really cool twists and turns that surprised me, that I enjoyed. So why don't we, Nick, why don't you start with some final thoughts here? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the things I wanted to bring up was, I guess part of your point with the story and whatnot. I mean, the game is not very deep. I would say, there's some interesting turns in there, but this isn't some intricate plot line or anything. So I think maybe it could have been a little bit deeper. I know we do this on every episode. I hate saying this. I always say this. We always have to mention it. This game does take a little bit of a cue from Dark Souls, where a lot of the lore and behind the scenes stuff that happens is told through items and item descriptions. Things lying around. You find an artifact. You find a gun. Maybe it'll have maybe the hat has a tidbit about the ancients used to use this and blah 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 blah. So I thought that was kind of cool, where you're not totally drowned by a ton of narrative. It's given to you through the items, which I thought was pretty neat. The other thing I wanted to say is I think Noah touched on this earlier. There's a couple of humorous moments that I really liked, and I think they were really clever. Like the place names, the names of all the zones. My favorite is probably the one that's Izza and Fala. It's like it's a pizza shop. It's a pizza and falafel shop, but the sign is broken, so it says Izza and Fala. I was like, that's fucking funny. That's awesome.
I didn't notice that. That's great.
One of the guns was really funny.
One of the guns is called the Gaper.
Yes. Yes. I love that too.
Nick, Noah, why don't you give your final thoughts? But Nick, in my final thoughts, I'll touch on what you said too.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, final thoughts, really simple, man. If you like these kind of games, you must play this game.
Yes.
It is totally worth it. I think I put 28 hours into it, and it was 28 hours of fucking loving the shit out of it the whole time.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you said it pretty well. It's a pretty good way to summarize this. I loved every second of this game, and I never do. Right? It's very rare. And right. I at no point was I like, can this just end? Can we just be done with this? I was engaged the entire time, and I want to double down on it is one of the most finely tuned games mechanically that I have ever seen. Yep. Like I'm not even going to touch on bugs and stuff because I play janky shit. Like this game, in terms of how tight you had to manage your resources, money is finite, you cannot grind. That I love when games can burn me and I deserve it. Right? I fucking love it.
Yeah.
I fucking love it. And what I also, something that Nick said too, I think you brought this up as well. The humor in this game, as it's told through items, is very funny. Mm-hmm. Like this game is supposed to be futuristic, where your characters like find like ice cream trucks and batteries, and they're like, "What is this?" Like what? Like I think you find like an ambulance, and they're like, "People rode in hospitals." I don't understand. Like something like something like that. They say really like goofy shit. So I actually think that is going to do it for this Fresh Take Tuesday. So we're going to be running this segment on Goddamn GameCube occasionally on YouTube. We just want to highlight games that surprised us and games that we liked. And so we want to have a thread of positivity running through the channel. So if you like what you see and what you hear, please subscribe to Goddamn GameCube. And thank you guys so much. And we are going to end this for now. Thanks for joining.